Well, quite a few people have asked me for a walk around video of this mill. This is the Frontier OS27. I've had it for about a year. I've got a fair amount of time on it. I'm going to walk you around and show you some of the features and things I've had problems with, and also talk about communication with Norwood and what they've done for me and how things are working. It's about 23 degrees this morning. I apologize if the video is shaky. We're in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic at the moment, so I decided to leave town and get out to the mill and see if I can get a few things done today. So as I mentioned, this is the Frontier OS27. Had it for about a year. I bought the mill itself, the trailer, and an extension. The first thing you'll notice probably is that the extension is a different paint color than the rest, or powder coating, of the rest of the mill. I guess this is an issue that Norwood was dealing with. I'm not sure if it's been worked out or not. As far as the mill is concerned itself, you've got your log hold downs here, that crank to pin the log up. There's a point on those, and I've had to make a couple of blocks of wood for actual boards so that it doesn't cut into them. The log support clamps, I just have two on here right now. The issue I've noticed with those is that because they simply just bolt on, hopefully you can see that all right, it's very hard to keep them square, as if they get bumped at all, they do move and you end up re-squaring those up quite a bit. I've heard of guys that have been welding them on or putting nuts on the back of the bolts, which is something I'm probably going to do as soon as it warms up a little bit. The trailer itself, I do have the fenders on here yet. I got to take those off today. I did haul this once outside of just bringing it out here, and the first thing I noticed is the trailer extension, once I got to my destination, was starting to sag. I installed the extension on the side that the rep from Norwood told me to, and this joint right here started to sag, and the end of the trailer was hanging down just a little bit by the time I got to where I was going. So I have to say, at this point, I would not recommend the trailer. The instructions to assemble it were very poor, along with the instructions to assemble the mill. They look like they maybe were written by someone who possibly isn't fluent in English. The part numbers were not in any sort of order. It was very confusing. When you transport the mill, the hold downs are right here, and you run a bolt through there and secure it to the track over the axle. So far those have proved to be okay. They do move around a bit, and I know that people have been welding those into place as well. The jacks that came with the mill, I'm not 100% impressed with, just because of the handle. When you turn them, they make contact with the track if you don't move them a specific way, which is kind of a pain. The track itself is very heavy duty. The joining plates have a curl in them, which I think adds some stability, and interestingly enough, the joining plates for the extension did not come that way, so those do not provide as much support. So that's something to keep an eye on. Under the hood here, the first issue I had was that my belt got all chewed up because the pulleys weren't aligned, and I did pull off this adjustment pulley and shim it and ran it for a while, and then noticed it still was off, so I ended up loosening the bolts and moving the motor. It just slides in a track here, so you can move that and adjust it. I did add an hour meter as well that you'll see there, just to keep track of things for oil change purposes. Other than that, under the hood, it does have disconnects that will trip if you open it and it's running. The water system, I did add an elbow, and I do have the adjustable ceramic block guides. I ordered it and specified that I wanted that, and of course when I got it, it wasn't shipped with them, so Norwood did send me all the parts, and I just don't have them on here yet. These roller guides, the bearings don't seem to last very long. This one is already pretty rough, doesn't want to spin on its own, and this one here seems to be okay yet. Under the hood here, there are a couple of grease zerks that you need to grease regularly. And I did break one of those off. They're just a real soft brass, so I just got one from a hardware store. These are M6 by 1, I believe. And I just threw that one on, so I've got to get some grease in there yet. And the dust chute does not seem to do a very good job. This is typically full of dust all the way up to the pulleys when I finish sawing, and I have to open it regularly and clean it out. The motor is a Briggs & Stratton. I've had no issues with that whatsoever. I should take that back. I did have an issue where it wouldn't run to full throttle, and I had to adjust the throttle cable right away. The water tank I have in my truck because it's cold out. I'm going to slap that on here yet today. This is your throttle control, so once it's running you just squeeze this and the motor takes off and engages the blade. Your crank handle to adjust the saw head up and down. The log scale, the parts on that are just plastic. Mine broke immediately. I measure every cut with a tape measure, which is really inconvenient. You can even see there was a red line on here and it faded before I even started storing the mill outside. The head adjusts with the cable system. In order to level the head, you actually adjust these turnbuckles on the bottom to make sure that your blade is level. You run it over top of a bunk and measure the blade on each side and adjust it up and down. The blade tensioning is done with this handle, and your blade tracking for each wheel has a separate handle, which you just spin in or out until your blade tracks correctly. All in all, if you're a guy like me who saws on the weekend and had, ambitions of maybe sawing for some friends, the mill does cut well once you get it up and running. It is kind of a pain to put together due to the instructions. The trailer was even worse. I would highly recommend that you either build your own trailer, or if you do buy this trailer, do not buy the extension because it just caused the track to sag, and as far as I'm concerned, I'm going to cut everything I need that's longer and then take it back off. It's also very hard to maneuver. If you have to go up any sort of incline at all, it will drag, so keep that in mind too. Like I said though, the mill itself cuts great once you get it up and running. I've been running the Wood-Mizer, I think they're the Turbo 7 blades. Those have been great. I cut a lot of red oak, popple, black walnut, cherry, things like that. So that is a little bit of a walk around on the mill. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments and I'll try to get to them as I have time. Thank you.